The Democratic Alliance says South Africa has reached a new low on the international stage. It says while Ukrainians live in fear of when the next bomb will drop on civilian targets, the South African National Defence Force is happily participating in the so-called Tri Maritime Exercise with the Russian Navy. We're joined by the DA Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, Kobus Marais. And of course, he's also an MP. Mr. Marais, thank you for being with us. What do you understand about this exercise?
Well, I think what one must understand about the exercise and how one must interpret that is obviously in the context of what is going on in the world. How will such an exercise benefit us, and how will that benefit the the leading nation in this regard, Russia? Now, with what is happening currently in Ukraine, and as you rightfully started by saying that civilian targets are bombed every single day, and there's clearly no doubt that human rights abuses are being is in the order of the day. So it is, one must be very more judgmental, or have a better judgment in terms of when do you what and how does it being perceived by the international world. How will it affect your foreign policy? How will it affect our potential for investments and even for grey listing? And in my view and our view, with what is going on in the world, this is bad judgment, it is bad timing to now being involved with a military exercise with Russia. One must also understand on the other side, we have got a defense force with a very much constrained budget, where we cannot even fund the maintenance and the acquisitions and upgrades of our own prime mission equipment, even basic resources like boots for our soldiers, uniforms, etc., vehicles. In a time like this, we have got money to spend on an exercise, a military exercise with Russia. Yeah. One wonders what can be the objective of that, and but whether Mr. that Marais, is a
There is a different context here as well. I understand the first exercise was apparently in 2019. So South Africa is also conforming to something of a tradition when it does these military exercises with Russia and China. And we are still part of the BRICS grouping. It seems like it would be pretty hard to pull out unless we pull out of BRICS. We're still there.
Not necessarily. South Africa has cancelled quite a number of military exercises over the last year, and 2 years specifically, and it is mostly done due to budgetary constraints. In terms of a time like this, where we have to look at austerity measures, obviously priorities is paramount, very important. You cannot go beyond. If you haven't got the money, you haven't got the money, and if you embark on exercises like this, it is really stealing from Peter to pay Paul. All that we will find eventually is a more dilapidated defense force, worse situation in terms of defense readiness and capabilities. And in terms of priorities, the last thing that we must do now at the moment is get involved in an exercise. Remember, we have got one frigate of the whole fleet that is available for our Navy. We've got none of our submarines available. We've got no maritime control and reconnaissance availability from our Air Force. So one wonders what is the purpose and the benefit for South Africa, and this is just a very, very bad timing and very bad priorities in our case.
Okay, so you've raised economic issues, and over and above that, is this about human rights, or is it about specifically Ukraine because it is at war? You haven't mentioned China, you haven't objected to China, which has been accused of human rights transgressions.
Oh, most certainly. I think, and we should lead by example, because we pride ourselves that we are a nation that stands for human rights, and that we will condemn anybody that tramples on human rights. So in that regard, both China and Russia are not the ideal partners at this stage. Yes, we know we are part of BRICS, but in the context of what is going on in Ukraine and the human rights abuses in Ukraine, And this was an exercise with the leading nation being Russia, not China, but Russia being the leading nation. So China, Russia has played such a dominant role, and in terms of what is going on, and the unhappiness of the international world and the concerns raised by them, it is in my and in our opinion very, very bad judgment and very poor priorities displayed here.
All right, I understand the argument based on human rights then, but it becomes difficult. I don't know if the DA raised an issue with the visit to Saudi Arabia. We do visits to China, many African nations accused of transgressing human rights, Zimbabwe under US sanctions. So you could be left with very few countries as friends, and the US sets itself up as a bastion of human rights. It has also been accused of huge transgressions in the past.
Correct, but remember, there's a difference between us being the leading nation in terms of an exercise like that, and there must be a benefit for us. If there are little or no benefits for us, and if in terms of our financial constraints, priorities are not in line with what we want to achieve and what we need to deliver to South Africa, then we must consider and reconsider everything. We do not have the luxury of a huge defense force with fantastic equipment and prime mission equipment. We have got constraints and we have got realities, and we cannot ignore the realities. Yes, exercises are very important, but at this stage, even the budget constraints for normal exercises are under pressure, and we do not have the amount of exercises on land that we require, and with the Air Force, and with the constraints and the little availability of naval vessels, it certainly posed the question: why would we do this with one or two vessels? What is the purpose of this exercise? Is it more an initiative by Russia to point a finger towards the West and NATO and Europe and America? If we are so neutral as government, and the minister has said, then we should not be seen in a time like this to even have a perceived preference in terms of a partner. Quite clearly, by embarking in a military exercise, it clearly gives the impression that we are on the side of Russia, and that we don't express any concerns or much concerns towards Ukraine. I know for a fact that there was no consultation with other nations like Ukraine about this exercise. So there's a lot of questions that can only damage our international image and our foreign policy.
We'll see if we can get some response. Of course, I understand this is only in planning stages right now. That was DA MP Kobus Marais. Thank you for your time.